All right, so you're ready to jump into the AWS Security Specialty certification,
Yeah.
and you want the real deal on how to conquer this thing.
Right.
We get it. That's why we took a deep dive into the Computer Networks Decoded YouTube course all about this cert.
Mhm.
And let me tell you, we came back with some serious insights.
This certification,
Oh, yeah.
it's not for the faint of heart.
No kidding.
AWS is looking for real-world experience here. You got to prove you can actually do security in the AWS cloud.
Not just talk about it.
Exactly.
So less theory.
Left the
More war stories.
but
More hands-on.
I love it. So tell
Yeah.
me, what did they really hammer home in this course?
Well, one thing they emphasized over and over,
Yeah.
hands-on experience is absolutely key.
Okay.
Reading the docs.
Right.
It's a good start.
Sure.
But to pass this exam,
Mhm.
you got to know how to use these AWS security services
Right.
in real-world scenarios.
That makes sense.
Huh.
You can't just memorize a bunch of facts and expect to be a security expert.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's all about application.
So what are some examples of those practical skills they dive into?
So one big one
Yeah.
is the AWS well-architected framework.
Okay. The well-architected framework.
Yeah, it's like
hear that.
your AWS security Bible,
Right.
even if you're a seasoned pro.
Mm-hmm.
This course reminds you that this is the foundation for building secure and resilient systems in the cloud.
Right. It's like the blueprint for doing things the AWS way.
Exactly.
But
yeah.
this course goes beyond just design, right?
Well, absolutely.
What about like actually responding to an incident?
Yes. They lean heavily on NIST's incident response lifecycle,
Okay.
from preparation to
Mhm.
detection containment,
Yeah.
all the way to post-incident learning.
Okay. So the whole shebang.
The whole thing.
Yeah.
It's not just theoretical.
Got it.
It's about how you would actually handle a real AWS security event.
Okay. Let's unpack that a little bit.
Mm.
What are some specific actions they talk about for incident response?
Well, one key concept is limiting the blast radius.
Okay. Limiting the blast radius.
Imagine a ship with separate compartments.
All right.
If one floods,
Yeah.
the whole thing doesn't go down.
Right.
That's the idea here.
Okay.
They talk about strategies like using AWS organizations
Okay.
and multiple VPCs to segment your environment.
So if one part gets compromised,
Very good.
the whole thing doesn't go down in flames.
You limit the damage.
Got it.
Mhm.
Containment is key.
Containment is key.
Okay, but before you can even contain something,
Right.
you have to know that something's wrong.
Absolutely.
How do you even know when to jump into action?
You need to know what normal looks like.
Okay.
That's what they stress.
So a baseline.
A baseline of normal behavior in your AWS environment.
And how do you do that?
They talk about using tools like CloudWatch
Okay.
and Guard Duty.
Mm-hmm.
You can spot anomalies quickly.
So it's like having a security camera?
Yeah.
That's smart enough to know if something's out of place.
Exactly.
That's pretty cool. And to make the most of that, you need to really understand your security monitoring tools.
Your arsenal.
Yeah, your arsenal.
The course dives deep into VPC flow logs,
Okay.
CloudTrail, Guard Duty.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just about memorizing the names.
Right.
It's about knowing how they work
Yeah.
and what kind of security insights they can provide.
So you can actually use them effectively.
Exactly.
And I'm guessing it's not enough to just know what the tools are called.
No.
You need to know how to actually use them in real situations.
Troubleshooting is a must.
Troubleshooting.
That's a big focus of the course.
Okay.
AWS wants to see that you can fix things when they break.
Not just that you know what they are,
Right.
they want you to walk the walk.
Walk the walk.
Now, what about securing the perimeter of your applications?
Edge security.
Edge security.
It's all about securing the perimeter.
Like building a fortress wall?
Yeah, they break it down from the global level with CloudFront
Okay.
down to regional entry points like S3 and ELBs,
So it's like a multi-layered defense.
layers of an onion.
Oh. And of course, we can't talk about AWS security without talking about IAM.
The gatekeeper.
It can be a bit of a beast.
Yeah, it can do.
But this course breaks it down in a way
Okay.
that makes it much less intimidating.
I'm all ears because IAM is so crucial, but it can also be so overwhelming.
Absolutely.
What do they really zero in on?
They want you to understand those core components: effect, action, resource, and that tricky condition element.
The condition.
It's about knowing how those pieces work together.
So it's like the grammar of IAM policies.
Exactly.
You got to know how to structure those sentences.
Yes, and they even walk through interpreting real-world examples.
Oh, that's helpful.
Because sometimes those policies,
Yeah.
they can look like a foreign language.
I feel you on that. Seeing real-world examples always makes things click for me.
Me too.
All right, now let's talk data encryption.
Oh, yeah.
It's the foundation of security, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. The course covers both symmetric and asymmetric encryption.
And what's the main takeaway there?
Choosing between them really depends on what you need.
Okay.
For speed,
Mm-hmm.
symmetric encryption is the winner.
Okay.
But if you need to share encrypted data securely,
Right.
asymmetric is the way to go.
So it's about picking the right tool
Right.
for the specific job.
Exactly.
Sometimes you need speed. Sometimes you need that extra layer of security.
And then, of course, there's the AWS Key Management Service, or KMS.
Oh, yes. KMS.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
Think of it like a digital vault for your encryption keys.
Okay, a digital vault.
It integrates seamlessly with other AWS services and handles tricky tasks like key rotation
Automatically.
automatically.
That's pretty awesome. Taking some of the manual work out of it.
Exactly.
So it sounds like they really cover a lot of ground in this course.
They do.
Everything from basic concepts to some pretty advanced stuff.
It's a lot to take in.
And they present it in a way
Yeah.
that's actually understandable,
They do a good job.
even when dealing with some complex topics.
Yeah. Now, out of all of that,
Mm-hmm.
what really stood out to you? What's the most important takeaway from the course?
What I found really fascinating
Yeah.
is the emphasis on proactive security.
Proactive security.
It's not just about reacting to threats.
Right.
It's about building security into your AWS environment from the ground up.
So anticipating potential issues
Exactly.
before they even happen.
That's the goal.
I love that concept, shifting left in security, thinking about security from the very beginning,
So important.
not just as an afterthought.
Right.
And it sounds like this course gives you the tools to actually do that.
It does.
Okay, well, all this talk about security has got me thinking, what's one question that's come up for you as we've been discussing this?
You know what I keep coming back to?
Yeah?
Is how crucial incident response is
Incident response.
and how important it is to have a well-defined plan.
Absolutely.
What about you? What's sticking with you?
I'm really intrigued by this idea of establishing those baselines and using tools like CloudWatch and GuardDuty to detect anomalies.
Mm-hmm.
It's like having a security system that can actually learn and adapt to your environment,
That's a good way to put it.
which is incredible.
It is.
And it all ties back to that proactive approach we were talking about.
Exactly.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this first dive,
We have.
but there's so much more to explore.
There is.
So stick around
We'll be right back.
for more of our deep dive into the AWS Security Specialty certification.
All right.
See you soon.
You know, as we've been talking about all this security stuff,
Yeah.
it really makes you realize how important troubleshooting is in the real world, right?
Totally.
It's one thing to know how things are supposed to work,
Right.
but things don't always go according to plan.
Never do.
Exactly.
And it sounds like this certification really acknowledges that
Absolutely.
they want to know you can handle the curveballs.
They do. The course has a whole section on troubleshooting, security monitoring,
Okay.
and logging solutions.
I'm all about real-world scenarios.
Oh, yeah.
So give me an example.
Okay, sure.
What kind of troubleshooting challenge might we encounter?
All right, so let's say you've got CloudTrail set up
Mm-hmm.
to log all the API activity in your account.
Okay. Makes sense.
And then suddenly,
Oh.
you notice logs are missing.
Oh, no.
What do you do?
Well, if I'm being honest,
Yeah,
my first reaction would probably be panic.
I think we've all been there.
But after I calm down,
Right.
where do I even start to figure out what went wrong?
Well, the course walks you through a really systematic approach.
Okay.
First things first,
Yeah.
you got to verify that CloudTrail is actually configured correctly.
Okay. So check the basics.
Exactly.
Make sure everything's set up the way it should be.
You're checking the trail status,
Mm-hmm.
the S3 bucket, where those logs are stored,
Right.
and the IAM roles and policies involved.
It's like detective work almost.
It is. You're piecing together the clues.
I like that. And you're using different tools and techniques to diagnose the issue.
Right? Like you might check CloudTrail's event history
Okay.
for any error messages. Or you could look at the permissions on that S3 bucket,
Right.
making sure that CloudTrail actually has right access.
That makes sense. But what if everything looks right in the configuration,
Yeah.
but you're still missing logs?
That's when you got to dig a little deeper.
Time for the magnifying glass.
You might need to look at the AWS service endpoints
Okay.
for those specific services you're trying to monitor.
Right.
You check to see if the endpoints are even enabled for logging
Right.
and if there are any network connectivity issues that might be preventing the logs from getting to CloudTrail.
That's a good point. It sounds like troubleshooting in AWS involves Not just understanding the services,
Yeah.
but also how they're configured
Right?
and how the infrastructure all fits together.
You got it.
It's a lot more than just knowing what a service is called.
It is. And that's what's so great about this course. It gives you the tools and knowledge to navigate that complexity.
So you're not just learning the what, it's the why and the how do I fix this when it breaks.
Exactly. Now, I know we talked about IAM earlier.
We did.
But it's such a core part of AWS security
It is?
that it's worth revisiting.
I agree.
One thing I've always found tricky is understanding how those policies are actually evaluated.
Yeah.
It can be a bit of a mystery sometimes.
Totally. Like you think you have everything set up correctly
Right.
and then something weird
And
happens.
you're like, what just happened?
Exactly.
The key here
Yeah.
is understanding that IAM policies are evaluated in a very specific order.
It's a specific order.
And this order
Okay.
is crucial for figuring out how permissions are actually granted or denied.
So it's more than just checking if a user has a policy,
Yeah.
lets them do a specific thing.
It's not that simple.
There's more to it.
There is. It's a multi-layered process.
Oh, okay.
First,
Right.
it starts with the explicit denies.
Explicit denies.
If any policy explicitly denies an action,
Mm-hmm.
that denial wins,
No matter what.
no matter what.
So even if there are other policies
Yeah.
that say the user is allowed to do something,
If there's one deny.
that denial wins.
It's like the trump card of IAM.
Okay, so those deny statements,
Yeah.
they're like the ultimate authority.
Exactly. It's fundamental for implementing least privilege.
Right.
You want to explicitly deny any actions
That shouldn't be allowed.
that shouldn't be allowed.
Don't leave anything to chance.
Right.
So err on the side of caution.
Yes.
Be very specific with those deny statements.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, once those explicit denies are out of the way,
Okay.
the evaluation moves on to the explicit allow statements.
Allows?
If there's an explicit allow
Mhm.
for both the action and the resource,
Okay.
then access is granted.
That makes sense. But what if there are multiple policies
Yeah.
that all have allow statements?
That's where the order of the policies comes in.
the order.
Yeah.
How does that work?
They're evaluated in the order they're attached.
Right.
And the last policy attached
Okay.
gets the final say.
So it's not just about what's in the policy,
Right.
it's also about when it was applied.
The order matters.
Interesting. Okay, so we've got denies,
Yep.
then allows,
And then what happens?
then what?
If there are no explicit allows or denies.
What's the default?
Implicit deny.
Implicit deny.
If a policy doesn't explicitly say you can do something,
Yeah.
you can't do it.
So if it's not a yes,
It's a no.
got it.
Yeah.
It's a lot to wrap your head around.
It is.
But it seems crucial for really understanding IAM
It is.
and making sure your environment is actually secure.
Exactly.
And luckily, it sounds like this course does a good job
It does.
of breaking it all down.
Step by step.
Yeah?
They use visuals and real-world examples.
Oh, that's helpful.
And they even have a section dedicated to troubleshooting those IAM policies.
Okay.
So you can practice working through scenarios and figuring out those tricky permission issues.
Awesome. Now, you mentioned something earlier that I wanted to circle back to.
Okay.
Identity federation using SAML.
Right. SAML.
Can you talk a bit more about that?
Of course.
What is it exactly, and why is it so useful for AWS security?
So SAML stands for Security Assertion Markup Language.
Okay.
And it basically lets you integrate your AWS environment with external identity provider.
External identity providers.
Right. So instead of managing separate user accounts and passwords for AWS,
Yeah.
you can leverage your existing identity infrastructure,
Like what?
like your company's Active Directory
Okay.
or other third-party identity management systems.
So it's like using your company ID badge
Exactly.
to get into different areas of the building?
Instead of having a separate key for every single room,
I like that analogy.
it simplifies user management
All right.
and also enhances security.
Right.
Because you're centralizing that authentication.
Makes sense. So walk me through how this actually works in practice.
Okay, so let's say a user is trying to access an AWS resource.
All right.
They're first redirected to their identity provider
Okay.
for authentication.
To verify who they are.
Right. If their credentials check out,
Yeah.
the identity provider issues a SAML assertion.
A SAML assertion.
Yeah.
What is that?
Think of it as a digitally signed document
Okay.
that confirms the user's identity
Okay.
and includes any relevant attributes or permissions.
So it's like a digital passport
Yeah,
that vouches for the user?
exactly. AWS receives that SAML assertion
Mm-hmm.
and uses it to grant temporary access
Okay.
to those requested resources.
So the user doesn't even have to enter their AWS credentials directly.
Right, their identity is verified
Yeah.
through that trusted identity provider.
That sounds really convenient.
It is.
And secure.
It streamlines the login process
Okay.
for users
Mm-hmm.
and helps to reduce the risk of compromised credentials.
Which is huge.
Absolutely.
And the course actually walks you through how to set all this up.
It does. It shows you how to configure SAML Federation with AWS,
Okay.
setting up the identity provider,
Right.
creating those IAM roles, and establishing the trust relationships.
So you're not just left hanging.
No, they walk you through it step by step.
Awesome. So we've talked about incident response,
Yeah.
IAM, and now SAML.
Right.
Is there anything else from the course that really stood out to you?
You know, I think what's really fascinating is how this course connects all these different security concepts. It's like peeling back the layers of an onion
Okay.
and seeing this really intricate web of security mechanisms
Right.
that all work together to protect your AWS environment.
I like that. It's all connected.
It is. It all fits together in this big puzzle. Okay, we're back, and now it's time to get into the nitty-gritty of encryption keys.
Yeah, encryption keys.
And key management in AWS.
Key management.
This stuff is like the backbone of keeping your data safe, right?
Absolutely. It's all about protecting that data.
Exactly. Think about it.
Yeah.
In AWS, you can encrypt pretty much everything.
I mean, everything.
The data sitting on your servers,
Right.
those EBS volumes, even your CloudWatch logs.
You name it, you can encrypt it.
But here's the catch.
Okay.
Without a solid key management strategy, your encryption is only as strong as your weakest link.
Right. So it's not just about scrambling the data.
No,
It's about having a system for managing the keys that actually unlock that encryption.
you got it. And that's where KMS comes in.
Ah, yes. KMS, the AWS Key Management Service.
Right. It's at the heart of it all.
Okay. Tell me more.
Picture it like a high security vault.
Right.
But for your encryption keys.
Okay. A digital vault.
Exactly. You can create them, store them,
Right.
rotate them, even delete them securely.
All through KMS.
All through KMS Plus. It gives you a centralized way to control who has access to those keys.
So it's kind of like having a master key ring for all your encryption needs.
But with that extra layer of security and control built in.
Now, here's a question.
Okay.
Why not just manage the keys yourself? Why even bother with KMS?
That's a great question.
Yeah, I'm curious.
And there are a few reasons why KMS is usually the best choice.
Okay.
First of all, it's incredibly secure
Okay.
and auditable.
Right.
We're talking FIPS 142 validated hardware security modules.
So that's like
Yeah.
gold standard.
The gold standard for security, especially when you're dealing with sensitive data.
Okay, so it's like Fort Knox.
Fort Knox for your encryption keys.
I like that.
You can sleep well at night knowing those keys are safe.
That's reassuring. But what else makes KMS so beneficial?
Well, another huge advantage is its integration with other AWS services. Lots of services, like S3 for storage,
Okay.
EBS for volumes,
Right.
RDS for databases.
All the big ones.
They all have built-in support for KMS encryption.
So you don't have to be a cryptography expert
Exactly.
to use it effectively.
You don't have to write a bunch of custom code.
It just works.
It just works.
And what about key rotation?
Key rotation.
Is that something I have to do manually?
Nope. KMS takes care of that for you automatically.
Automatically.
Automatic key rotation.
That's awesome.
You can schedule keys to rotate regularly,
Okay.
and KMS handles it all behind the scenes.
That's a huge relief.
Manual key rotation could be a real pain.
Yeah. No,
I'd rather let KMS deal with that.
You mentioned access control earlier.
Right.
How does KMS handle that?
KMS lets you control access to your keys with a very fine-grained level of detail.
Very specific.
You can use IAM policies
Okay.
and KMS key policies to specify exactly who can manage those keys,
Right.
who can use them for encryption and decryption.
So it's like a multi-layered approach.
It is. Using both IAM and those KMS-specific policies
To really lock things down.
to make sure those keys are only accessible to the right people.
That's important.
It is. And the course dives deep into how to actually write those KMS key policies effectively with examples and different scenarios.
That's helpful.
It's all about understanding those different policy types,
Right.
the elements involved, and the best practices for securing access.
Got it. So KMS is clearly a powerful tool
It is.
for managing those encryption keys in AWS.
Definitely.
But Are there any other options out there?
There are a couple,
Okay.
but KMS tends to be the go-to for most people.
Right.
One option is Cloud HSM,
Cloud HSM.
which provides dedicated hardware security modules.
Hmm.
It's like the Fort Knox of key management,
Even more secure,
even more secure.
but probably more complex to manage.
It is. It's usually for workloads with really strict security and compliance requirements.
So things like
Yeah.
financial transactions
Financial transactions.
or sensitive healthcare data,
Exactly.
where you absolutely cannot afford any breaches.
Right.
Now, the course also talks about encrypting data in transit, not just data at rest.
Data in motion.
Data in motion.
Protecting your data as it moves around.
Right. What are some of the key things to think about there?
You want to make sure those communication channels
Yeah.
between your application services and users are really locked down.
So those connections are secure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that usually means using encryption protocols like TLS, SSL
TLSSL.
to protect that data as it travels across the network.
So it's like putting your data in a tamper-proof envelope
Yeah.
before you send it through the mail.
Great analogy.
Yeah.
Even if someone intercepts it,
Right.
they can't read what's inside.
I like that.
And the course goes through all sorts of ways to implement this encryption in transit,
Okay.
leveraging different AWS services like elastic load balancing, CloudFront,
Right.
setting up VPN connections.
So multiple options depending on your needs.
Right. What about database connections?
Oh, yeah. Those can be tricky.
They can be a real vulnerability.
If they're not secured properly.
Right. But luckily,
Yeah.
most AWS database services like RDS and Redshift,
Okay.
they support encryption in transit.
That's good to know.
You can configure them to use those SSL/PLS connections.
Right.
So nobody can eavesdrop on your database traffic.
Or tamper with it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's all about adding those layers of protection.
It's really impressive how AWS builds in security at every level.
It is.
From the network itself to the applications running on top of it, and even down to the data.
It's comprehensive.
It really is. They've thought of everything.
That's one of the things that makes AWS so great from a security perspective.
I agree.
Security is baked into the platform from
Yeah.
the ground up.
Giving you the tools and the control you need
Right.
to build a secure environment.
That meets your specific requirements.
Well, this has been an amazing deep dive
Yes.
into the AWS Security Specialty certification.
Lots to cover.
I feel like I've learned so much.
Me too.
If you had to pick one key takeaway
One key takeaway.
for our listeners, what would it be?
I would say the most important thing to remember
Okay.
is that security in AWS is a shared responsibility.
Shared responsibility.
AWS provides the foundation,
Yeah.
but it's up to
A
you
user.
to implement and manage the security of your applications and your data.
So it's a partnership.
It is.
AWS gives you the tools,
Right.
but you have to use them effectively.
You have to take ownership of your security posture,
I like that.
and this certification gives you the knowledge and the skills to do just that
To secure your AWS environment.
and protect your data.
Well said. So we've reached the end of our deep dive
We have.
into the AWS Security Specialty certification.
It's been a journey.
We've talked about everything from incident response and IAM
Yes.
to encryption keys.
And secure data transmission.
We've covered a lot of ground,
We have.
but hopefully you've learned something new along the way.
I hope so.
And you're feeling more prepared to tackle this certification.
That's the goal.
It is a challenging one.
It is
But it's also incredibly rewarding.
very rewarding.
So keep learning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.
Until next time.